Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tim Silberman. I'm one of the lecturers here in the Centre for Cross-Cultural Mission. And I want to tell you about something that happened last year. In September last year, there was a gathering of over 5,000 evangelical Christians from more than 200 different nations in Incheon near Seoul in South Korea. There were an additional more than 5,000 people participating in this gathering online, of which I was one. And this was the fourth Congress on World Evangelization hosted by the Lausanne movement. So over 3 sessions at Principals Hour this semester, we're going to be thinking about this gathering. We're going to consider some of its strengths, its weaknesses, and its impact. But to begin, we need to zoom out a little bit, make sure we all know something about the Lausanne movement. So what is Lausanne? Well, the Lausanne network is a collaboration of evangelical leaders from all around the world with a shared vision, a fourfold vision, which is to envision and work toward a world in which there is the gospel for every person, disciple-making churches for every people and place, Christ-like leaders for every church and sector, and kingdom impact in every sphere of society. Lausanne began in the city of Lausanne in Switzerland in 1974. There was a gathering there which was called together by the 2 men you'll see in this next picture, Billy Graham, the US evangelist, and John Stott, the British church leader and theologian. They called together 2,400 mission-minded peoples from 150 different nations to talk about the task of world evangelization. And since that first gathering in 1974, there have been 2 more major congresses, one in 1989 in Manila and one in Cape Town in 2010, which I was able to participate in. There have also been multiple other consultations in between smaller gatherings and networks of people getting together to discuss issues that relate to the task of world evangelization. So, why do we need Lausanne gatherings like this one? Well, there were a lot of wonderful things that arose from that first gathering in 1974. The gathering produced a document which is called the Lausanne Covenant. It's about a 2,000-word document that provides a really helpful outline of evangelical convictions about missions and how we, as his people and church, should participate in that, one that I hope you will all read. There have been also a number of key issues that have come out of it. At that first Congress, the issue of unreached people groups was first put on the agenda. Ralph Winter gave a talk in which he spoke about hidden peoples and the cultural and linguistic barriers that prevented the gospel getting to all people. And unreached people groups has shaped missions thinking ever since. The gathering also gave a significant voice to evangelical Christians from non-Western contexts, particularly Latin America. So some key Christian leaders like Rene Padilla and Samuel Escobar were able to put their perspective into the conversation, particularly around what's the relationship between acts of social justice and evangelism. Since that gathering, there have also been lots of very useful documents produced. You should definitely read the Lausanne Covenant, the Manila Manifesto, which was put out in 1989, the Cape Town Commitment, and yes, the alliteration continues with the Seoul Statement, which was put out last year. These are great documents that help us explore some of the issues confronting the task of world evangelization. There have also been lots of, I guess you'd say, serendipitous consequences of these gatherings. People have met and worked out to do things. Young leaders have connected with older Christian leaders, and that spurred them on in their ministries around the world. It's led to evangelistic missions starting and all sorts of Christian development and poverty alleviation efforts being begun. Reconciliation between Christians from Palestine and Israel, from Japan and Korea. There have been lots of positive impacts, but I want to suggest that we need Lausanne gatherings like this primarily to help us have a truly global vision of God's global mission. Just before the Congress last year, the Lausanne movement published a 500-page report called The State of the Great Commission. Written by lots and lots of different people, this report provides a really valuable insight into what are the issues facing the task of world evangelization. And it explored particularly what are the consequences of the great shift in global Christianity. Now that 70% of all Christians live in Latin America, Africa, and Asia, how do we engage in this task of global mission? There are Christians in lots of places where there weren't 100 years ago. But the report also showed us that the task is far from done. As you can see from this graph, this shows the percentage of people in each region of the world who are evangelized. In other words, do they have access to the gospel? And you can see those lower lines, which represent Africa, number 5, and Asia at the bottom, show us that there are still billions, in fact, over 3 billion people in this world who are beyond the reach of the gospel. We need to keep pressing into the task of world evangelization. But the problem is, as the next image shows, there's a very uneven distribution of even our missions force with regard to this effort. So there are about 450,000 foreign missionaries around the world. 435,000 of them are working among the reached, and only 15,000 amongst the 3 billion and more unreached. But there's also a lot of good news in this report. It helps us explore and understand the fact that missions these days is polycentric and polydirectional. What does that mean? Well, it's coming from lots of different centres. It's no longer from the west to the rest. Missions is from everywhere to everywhere. And in fact, as you can see from these numbers, the US still sends out the largest number of foreign missionaries leaving the country, but look at the 4 nations under that. On the right there, you'll see Brazil, South Korea, the Philippines and Nigeria are the next 4 biggest sending countries. And this doesn't take into account the thousands of cross-cultural missionaries working within their own countries. There's perhaps 100,000 of those within India alone. So the fact is, we have a vital role to play in global missions as Christians here in Australia. There's a huge task to be done, but we can't do it without engaging with our brothers and sisters from around the world. We need to learn from their experiences and their perspectives and explore ways to link arms with them. At the opening ceremony of last year's conference, Michael O, who's the CEO of Lausanne, gave a presentation in which he said the 4 most dangerous words of the global church are, "I don't need you." We need to make sure that we don't engage in this task of global mission, which is so important, with an attitude that says, "I don't need you." And I think gatherings like Lausanne help us to do that. Thanks.